Hi everybody, happy Art Day! Today I'm having another painting, a commission that I did with watercolor on watercolor paper. This time around it's mother and son, and I'm starting off with my Schminke Academy watercolors to paint the hair of oh, I forgot to cut out that blow dryer part. So yeah, I'm starting with my watercolors with the pans just to have a very flowy look, and then I switched over to my Dürer watercolor pencils to bring in some lines where there's like shadows and such, just to give this hair a little structure and a little more of a darker black look, because honestly the guy has black hair and not gray hair. Well, there's a little gray, but not that much. And I really happened to have not cut out my drying bits here, so you can see how often I dry paintings in between when I work with watercolors. I then went on to the skin tones and the dark, very dark indigo blue shade, again coming back to the Academy colors for the shirt, because this is quite the big section of the painting, and that I think works just way better with the watercolor pans. I don't really like watercolor pencils for the big surfaces to work with, but I very much like them for tiny bits and pieces, so a lot of this painting will be done with the Dürer watercolor pencils. But those bigger sections, I think, work better, for me at least, with the watercolor pans, because then watercolor can do the thing it's supposed to do, which means flowing where it wants to flow and make very interesting patterns and such, which is a little harder to do with watercolor pencils. And that's why I combined these both sorts of watercolor in one painting. Once I had that dried down, I went on with my watercolor pencils again, just cleaned up some of the edges, added a little bit of a darker shade. It's also indigo, but it's from another supplier. So one of them is Schminke, one of them is Faber-Castell, and you can see the pencils are a little darker than what I got with my Schminke watercolors. And because I can control the pigment very well, I can really just lay down a lot of shadows there, or wrinkles in a shirt, like I just did. I went on to assortment of grays for the jacket that the mom is wearing, and just colored in all the sections. And this is where I really like the pencils. Very controllable. I can lay down a certain shade of a color only where I want it, and can control where that pigment goes by adding just a very little water later on. And since I'm using the pencils, the brushes that have the water barrel in the back, they only dispense so much water, so I can really control how much water is coming out of the pencil, and how much I can move the pigment. And I love that a lot for a little more intricate or smaller bits on watercolor paintings. Also, the Dürer color palette is just lovely, very natural colors that I really like to use a lot. I'm one of those painters that really like colors that are, well, not too bright, but more like muted colors, and colors that you can definitely find in real life. I mean, you can also find those colors in with like those bright colors in real life. I'm not saying that. I mean, like, look at any kind of blossom or flower or anything, and you can see really, really, really bright colors. But some sets don't have a lot of these very muted tones, and the Albrecht Dürers happen to do so. They happen to have those muted shades in the palette, and that's why I like that supply a lot for anything that is portraits. So I'm adding a little more definition and shade to the jacket while the shirt dries. I did take some artistic license to change the colors of the shirts because I wanted to have color repetition on this painting. So I gave both people a dark blue shirt. They were different, colored differently in the reference photos, but I decided to just switch that up because artistic license, you know? I think it just makes for a more calm and cohesive kind of painting. I think it would have also worked okay-ish would I have kept the original colors. But like that, I can make other colors pop. So the mom is having red hair, and I think that just pops so well against all of the grays and the blues and the blacks on the painting. It pretty much stands out then, and I kind of wanted that, and I didn't want to take away from that by using other colors or the original colors for both shirts. I went in with my skin tones. And this time I learned from like the last commission painting, I did not paint in her glasses yet. I'm gonna dry the paper in between, and I'm gonna paint in the glasses later. That's why you don't see any eyes yet that I drew. And also the eyes themselves, I'm gonna use ink pens for them, because they're very tiny, very little, and I would not have been able to put that down well with watercolors. So that is one thing I really like to do. I like to use the medium that works best, and if that means that I need to put in a little ink instead of having everything just done in watercolor on that particular size of paper, then so be it. But I'm still going with the hair first, shading stuff, adding more and more shades just to, well, get a little bit of structure in that hair and not make it look like a helmet, but really make it look like hair. Which again, the smaller the size is that you're painting with, the more difficult it is to put in great structure of things with watercolors. Would have been very different would that have been painted with color pencils, or then it would be drawn, not painted. But anyways, I moved on to the books, chose a couple of browns and grays and cream colors, a little bit of yellow ochre too, to color the books, and a little bit of gray for the necklace and such. So once things are dry, I can use another color on top and draw something in, and then liquefy the painting again. For the background, because there's quite a lot of details here, especially around the hand, I decided to go with watercolor pencil and not go with my watercolor pens. at least for now, for that part up there, because again, I can control things way better with the watercolor pencils, with the amount of water I put out. Though I'm using the same water brush with the watercolor pans, you can have a little bit of a different when it comes to controlling the paint, because you're picking up a wet medium instead of liquefying something that is on your paper. There's a difference how the in how the brush performs depending on what kind of medium you're using. But yeah, you can see that it works a little better with the watercolor pencils on with the brush. I'm very, very carefully now using the watercolor pans, so the Schminke pans. I picked up very little pigment and not really tried to control my water flow, because I wanted to have the flowy look for the background. But on those tiny bits there between the fingers, I didn't want to screw things up and have them flow, have the color flow where it's not supposed to go. And it worked pretty well, but I really had to work very slowly, very controlled, as much as I could control the water flow and such. So that worked out. And I adjusted the size of the shirt, or the way the amount of color I put in, how low I went with the dark blue, because it was just a little too high for me. I mean, he's supposed to flow out into the white paper, but that was just a little too high for me, so I added a little more of the dark blue and extended his shirt. And then I went on with a lovely almost butter yellow pencil for the background. And I chose the pencil because I don't have any similar shade like that in my watercolor pans, and I wanted a very light, very warm kind of yellow. So I did go with the pencils. It was a little more difficult to really make the background look flowy like the table, but it worked out well enough, so I was definitely okay with that. I adjusted a few things and then went in with my ink pen to add a few more details, especially the mom's eyes, because at this point she's still blind. Also added a little water to the rings, and then my painting was done. I hope you enjoyed watching along. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. The blog post will be up at 10 a.m. Central European time, so if you're interested in what colors I used, you can read up on that. I will see you in 2 weeks with a new painting or drawing. Have fun, take good care, and stay artsy. Be inspired. I'm gonna see ya. Bye.